Why had he anticipated a storm? Well, as the storm came, and as it gathered up momentum, as it increased in intensity, the eagle made one slight change, one adjustment. He tilted his wings. The more the wind blew, the more the storm came, all it could do to him was lift him. And as the storm continued lifting him higher and higher and higher, until finally he was above the storm. But yet he was way high in the sky, and it's interesting to know he arrived at this position without any self-effort. Why was he delighted? Well, he was looking forward to 3 hours now to glide without any actual energy expending. In other words, he was going to look over the whole countryside, one mountain peak to the other, and for 3 hours he glided down, down, down to the bottom of the valley. We say that the storm gave him a free ride of 3 hours. And what do you suppose the eagle is looking forward to next? Some more adversity. Number 16, rhythm. There's a certain rhythm that you have. There's a certain rhythm in the universe, and once you've got the two together, you've got it made. What do I mean by rhythm? If you watch Babe Ruth knock a home run in slow motion, you've got it. He goes around, he hits the ball, and by the way, when he hits the ball, where's everybody's eyes? Watching the home run, right? But now in the film, in slow motion, you know he goes around in a complete circle, that he makes as much movements after he hits the ball as he did before he hits the ball. And as he comes around at the last circle, his arms go out straight. There's no rigidness in the elbows. It's completely relaxed. And as he lets go of the bat, it's almost as if the bat just slides in a beautiful angle across the grass. And by the way, as soon as he lets go of the bat, he continues in the circle. And you know he doesn't run in a straight line to first base. By the way, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, but he starts toward the dugout and makes a circle. We say then, does he have rhythm? Right, in every act of life, we have as much foreplay as we have afterplay. In other words, when you're any type of an orgasm in actual intercourse, there should be as much foreplay before the act as there is actual fondling and loving and caressing after the act. Is it life? A basic rhythm. And when you feel this rhythm, we have expressions. Everything he touches turns to gold. Have you ever had days when this happened? You just felt like you're connecting, then you found the rhythm. Now everybody has a different rhythm. So what you've got to do is find out the rhythm you have in this world and get into that rhythm. And do it in your entire life. Number 17 summarizes a lesson that we've already had. Have a positive subconscious and consciousness. In other words, do not tolerate any type of negative thinking. Number 18, temperance. I know the first thing you think about when you think of temperance is don't drink. When I say temperance, I mean that you have enough of everything and not too much. I'll give you an illustration. Can you visualize in about 2 more months the first strawberry? Big, delicious, sweet. Ooh, isn't it good? All right, now it's in the middle of June, and I'm going to throw you into a boxcar full of them. Isn't it awful? Do you know what I mean now by temperance? In other words, is there an actual limit to how much you can enjoy something? The best way to illustrate this is to go back to our affectional field diagram. Y and x-axis. I'm going to start by making my decision that I like a certain object. I'm going to go through a normal curve that I have for everything material. As I start out, we say in the areas which we're going to designate as A, I am increasing at an increasing rate. In the area that I'm designating as B, I am increasing at a decreasing rate. And then the area C, I am decreasing at a decreasing rate. Now, temperance means I stop on the line between A and B. Now, if you're from the other side of the tracks, you've never had any strawberries before, and you suddenly have some, you can't stop between A and B. Have you ever had a certain food in your life that you pushed until you reached point D? Now, how do you feel about that food today? Forget it. Have you ruined it forever? Isn't this awful to take something that God created for you to enjoy and indulge in it to such a point that no longer can you enjoy it? I was actually giving a seminar one night and someone asked me, how many times should a couple have intercourse in a week? You got the answer, haven't you? We were made so differently, I can't tell you the exact number of times, but I'll tell you this much, you stop between A and B. This means what? I enjoy something as long as my enjoyment is increasing at an increasing rate. By the way, does this add more enjoyment for me? Point B. Yes, it does. It does. Watch this. This is where most people are tricked. But could I be spending my time on another object at point A? And would I be having more enjoyment than I would trying to milk the last bit of enjoyment out of this one at point B? In other words, the couple, instead of having intercourse for the fourth time, could listen to a record, couldn't they? And would they get more enjoyment out of the record because they would be at point A than they would with intercourse at point B? Now, if you're in the lower class, what do you suppose you tend to do now? Go clear to point D. Now, is that because they don't know there are other things in the world? Now, to prove that our Creator believes we should only use point A, how many foods are there? How many colors? How many flavors? You know, we really don't know, do we? Then, do you believe that there are enough to where you can enjoy food at point A? Now, I'm actually telling you how to have temperance this year with strawberries. And by the way, temperance with everything else in your life. Now, just think back of all the good things that you've ruined, and you'll realize then, is temperance essential to enjoyment of life? What I would like to do is when I reach the line between A and B, pick up something else. I'm running another A, and then here's my line again between an A prime and B prime, and then I run another point, and can you see what's happening? In other words, as I do this each time, I'm attracted to a new area in a space of time, and then do I really enjoy life? Now, a person who does not use temperance will arrive at D. How do they begin to think toward all of life? Is that all there is? Have you heard people when they finally, in their 60s and 70s, say, I've lived everything, I've done everything, there's nothing left for me on this planet? We say they've exhausted a few things without knowledge of what is here. And the exhaustion in a few areas has arrived them in a negative syndrome below point D. Number 19, love of self. If you're going to live to 162, there's got to be one guy in this world that's pretty special to you. And that has to be you. If you were to ask me, what is the greatest problem that man faces on the face of this earth today, I would have to tell you he does not love himself. He punishes himself. Let me read a quote from Pavlov. This is the man who worked with the dogs and the saliva and the bell. Well, that's about all we really remember him for, but he spent his entire life as a physiologist. And he was primarily interested in long life. That was his study. He was a Russian, but he was a Russian when they were good Russians. Here's his statement I like to quote. Man could and should live to be 100. If they fail, Pavlov noted, it's only because of three things. Number one, intemperance. 2, lack of regularity. 3, and their own criminal attitude toward their organism. Are you guilty of any of those? By the way, this is a result of a lifetime of study of how to live past 100. And he comes up with these conclusions. We say then that we have just mentioned temperance, right? Which is the one he lists. The one we've just mentioned is love of self, and he describes love of self in the negative as their own criminal attitude toward their organism. Have you ever felt guilty and punished yourself? Isn't that awful? In other words, do you really love yourself tonight? You'll find out that 95% of American population would have to say no to that question. In other words, 95% of our population do not love themselves. If you love yourself, you've solved most of your problems. Number 20, I have to love other people. Now, this is exactly the normal, natural product of love of myself, because whatever feelings I have toward myself do I have toward others. All right, now, if I truly love myself, do I love you? And to the degree I love myself, to that degree I love you. So therefore, if you're going to live around here, do you have to like the people? I mean, if you start building up negative syndromes toward different people, and you keep living for a little longer, and then you build up some more, pretty soon, what do you think of most of the people on this earth? You wonder, why on earth do I have to live here? A poor place to be with all these kind of people. And the more you dislike the people, the more you want to leave, don't you? Now, the way you can find this out is talk to some elderly people who have become rather cynical. And they'll tell you, there's nobody left in the world good. I've heard it said, all the world is queer, save thee and me, and sometimes even thee's a little peculiar. With that expression, you can understand why they have to die. I mean, you want to live in a world with all these plenty people. So we have to love everybody. Now, when I love everybody, something else happens to me. And this becomes sort of magic, and the word I'm going to use for 21 is called graciousness. And I want to describe it to you so you can fall in love with it. Graciousness can be summarized in the word love of everything. I love babies. I love baby blankets. I love violets. I love the smells of flowers, roses, mountains, sunsets, lakes, rivers, frogs. Can you just turn yourself loose? In other words, everything is wonderful. Let me give you an illustration. I was talking to a logger the other day, and he said there's only one kind of a good tree. And I said, what's that? He says, when they're laying down flat. Would you contrast that with the gentleman I had on my ranch about a year ago? He looked over there at a clump of coniferous. And as he looked at this clump, he says, this is amazing to me. These are trees that are tall. Oh, they're over 50 feet to 100 feet tall. He said, this is amazing. He says, look at that clump of trees. There are 7 different kinds of coniferous in that group. He said, the person that logged and left those must have really understood and loved trees. Can you look at a forest and see different things? Now let's take that same logger. He comes to your home to eat an evening meal. After he leaves your home, he has no idea whether you had a carpet or not. You say, what did you eat with? I don't know. It was a knife and a fork. Was there glasses on the table? I guess there was. I don't remember. Were they hand blown? What's that? Look at this glass. Did you know that some people can appreciate that and others can't? I believe in having rare discernment. What I'm trying to do is to show you, can you observe? Some people can go down to the historical museum and know everything there is to know in the whole thing in 1/2 hour. They made a complete tour. Other people go down there, and when they close the place, they have to kick them out, and they come back the next day because they're just getting started to find out what's there. In other words, there is enough in this earth to keep you occupied how long? Infinite. In other words, there's millions of things around here to inspect, to love, to examine, to cherish. Now, if you have graciousness, is not graciousness being able to have a actual refinement, to know that different things are different ways and make up different things, and to be able to entertain in such a way that I have appreciation for things? That's all there is to it. By the way, he didn't even know whether it was a carpet or not. But how many kinds of carpets are there? In other words, could there be such a thing as fineness of home? I'll tell you something interesting for you gentlemen. Did you realize that there's about 30 different kinds of materials that ladies' dresses are made out of? And that each type of material has different characteristics and lends itself to different kinds of styles? Why don't you set yourself up on a hobby to make sure your wife has within her wardrobe a dress made out of each kind of material? Let me give you an illustration. My wife was going to sew, and she was going to sew a skirt. And up until this time, I thought skirts are skirts. There's only one kind of skirt, that's a skirt. Why? Before she got through studying patterns and styles, I found out that there are hundreds of kinds of skirts. I've never looked at a skirt the same way since. In other words, does this add variety? Is it possible for you to go through this world not knowing what's here? And by the way, if you do this, you will believe that you have explored everything by the time you are 30 years of age. Then what are you going to do with the next 30 years? Wait to die. In other words, you've already known everything that's here, so now I'm going to spend 30 more years just being bored with what I already know. And by the time you're 60, you think I should have been dead 30 years ago. I would like to show you tonight how to be 162 and know what? I'm just beginning. I've just begun to find out what the world is about. Now, would you understand how the man 80 going around the world on his honeymoon, why he'd be interested in differential calculus? But really, is not differential calculus a fascinating thing? There's no question about it. So I would think that what you should do tonight is study the details of life. And there's several ways to do it. Number one is to buy a camera. Another way is to buy a little $1.50 magnifying glass and go for little walks in nature. Another way is to take a little frame, and you can do this with a 35mm slide. Take the slide out of the frame and take the frame and go for a walk and look at things through the frame. A final way that will be just as effective as all of these is to find a little child about 4 or 5 years of age and donate 4 hours for a trip. Put your finger in their hand and let them lead you away. And don't you go anywhere. You go wherever they want to go for 4 hours. Just let them take you wherever they want. And whenever they look at something, you try to find out what they're looking at. Oh, they'll wear you out. You'll be amazed at what a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old can discover in 4 hours on this earth. Are you slowing yourself down from your rapid pace to find out what it's all about? Now, once you fall in love with everything to this degree, do you want to be around a while? I mean, life is fascinating. Life is interesting. You say, should we actually have no limitations? In other words, is it all right for a man to have a flower garden? Why not? In other words, do anything you want to do. Would you like to make a study of men who have begun tremendous professions and hobbies after they were 80 years of age? Let's take Dr. Albert Schweitzer for an illustration. Did you know that he didn't always know how to play the piano? Would you like to take a guess of how old he was when he had his first lesson? By the way, in case you don't know, he has actually played concerts. He was past 60. You know, we've had some famous artists, some famous composers that didn't even know that that was what they were going to do until they were old people. I'm thinking of some that were in their 70s and their 80s before they even started. So, tonight, are you young enough to do anything you want to do? As we bring this wonderful night to a close, and just think, we've learned all the secrets on how to live a long, productive, healthy, happy life. I think it would be only fitting, before we close, to see if we can find an object lesson in nature given to us by our Creator to let us know what He thinks about what we've learned tonight. The first lesson, let's go to the little leaf in the spring. Can you see it? Small, perfect, fresh, clean, young, pure. Watch it grow. Not one blemish, not one spot. We say we have a perfect leaf, don't we? In fact, you know, this leaf is so perfect that the wind hasn't even blown it yet. Every vein, just perfection. Now you say, is this beautiful? Yes, this is beautiful. But would you like to know something far more glorious? Let's follow this leaf to old age. In the fall, the array of colors is the most glorious time in the life of a leaf. Right now in your imagination, why don't you go back to the time when you can visualize the most vivid, beautiful array of autumn foliage. Now, really, how does a leaf go out of this world? More glorious, more beautiful than any spring leaf could ever be. Let's take another illustration from nature. A sunrise and a sunset. Now would you visualize that it's cool, crisp night air and it's dark? And all at once there's a sudden ray of light coming across the whole world. The dew is on the ground, and we're getting ready to experience something dramatic, something exciting. A sunrise. Now, is a sunrise beautiful? You know it's beautiful. The colors come across the sky and we're ready to begin a new day. Would you like to know something more beautiful than a sunrise? Well, let's follow this day to old age. People begin to wake up. They begin to hurry here, hurry there. Now, this scuffling around on the face of the earth creates a problem. You see, the sun has evaporated the dew, and now a little bit of dust is becoming mixed into the atmosphere. Now, I'd like for you to let this dust be comparable to the wind that blew the leaves and to the wear and tear of human life on this earth. Now, the thing that's beautiful is the fact that this aging process is what causes the beauty. The day is growing to a close, and we experience a sunset far more glorious, far more beautiful than the sunrise. Why? Because the dust particles in the atmosphere produces deeper, richer, more vivid colors in the sunset. Now let's go to humans. Can you see this person excitingly pulling this little pink or blue blanket back? Now listen. What a beautiful baby. Oh, how darling she is. Now, do we have something clean, young, pure, charming? Have you ever heard the expression? Everybody loves a baby. Now, what do you suppose is more beautiful than a baby? What do you suppose is more glorious than a baby? Well, let's take a temporary trip to a local compost pile. What I'd like for you to do tonight is to view the remains of a human being. Age 66. He has ripped his clothes off. Now, this is quite embarrassing for a mixed group. but he knows no modesty. In fact, he doesn't seem to know anything. He scratches his head, but not really scratching it. It's just sort of a fumbling of his head. He starts to walk and he stumbles. No coordination. By the way, I'm describing an actual situation. When I was a teenager, I went with a church group to spread some Christmas cheer. And I had some fruit. I started to give him the fruit, and he didn't even know what it was. He mumbled some obscene words. By the way, by now I was close enough till the smell began to make me nauseated. He didn't know how to go to the bathroom anymore, and the whole living area that he was in had a horrible odor. I think it was worse than animal, his ape-like behavior, the awkwardness of it. Now are you beginning to see why the relatives had to commit him? Now, do you think for one moment that this is the way the Creator would like for you to leave this world? Absolutely not. I like to contrast this compost pile situation with a dear old lady. She's 94. Now, her face is wrinkled, I'll grant you. Her hands are very wrinkled. But now, would you compare the wrinkled hands with the wind-blown leaf or the dust in the atmosphere? She becomes kinder, more tender because of the wrinkles. She smiles, and as we look into her eyes, we see love. We see beauty. We say that her very being radiates. There's a glow. Now, have you ever heard the expression, they grow old more gracefully? In other words, this particular lady every day becomes sweeter, more tender, more kind. Now, I'd like for you to actually know that this lady is more glorious, more beautiful than any baby could ever be. Now, is this the way you should leave the world? In other words, tomorrow, in your very life, should it be more beautiful and more glorious than today? Every day you live, as love permeates your being more and more, you become more lovely, more glorious than when you entered this world. Now, tonight, I want to leave a choice with you. I'd like for you, as you leave the seminar, to visualize this remains that we described in this compost pile. Then I'd like for you to contrast it in your imagination with this sweet, loving, kind, tender lady. Then I'd like for you to choose. Which do you want as your destination? And as you choose the most glorious thing we know, the joy of having lived a full life, then I want you to come back to the principles that we have learned tonight and realize that no matter what it takes, we're going to practice these until we have the actual rewards that are rightfully ours in old age.